in this part 2 of the mistake number 5 of the deadly sins of the 6-figure product launch. We're going to be continuing with the JV mistakes. All right, we already discussed part 1, and in this part 2, we're going to be taking up the other issues that you need to be aware of when it comes to selecting JV managers for your product launch. All right, so now we want to talk about advertising issues. All right, these are issues that probably may not occur to you if you're a rookie product launcher, but I found out the hard way that they matter. You got to ask questions like who will do the pre-launch and the launch adverts. We talked about that. Who's going to handle it? Is it going to be handled by the JV manager, or is it going to be handled by you? And whose advert account will be used? Those need to be discussed, understanding that whoever does it has financial implications. All right, number 1, if your JV manager does it, that means all the data concerning your advert will be with him. The pixels for retargeting will be with him. And possibly all the page likes and all that you need will be with him. So you have to think about it. If he's going to do it, you may want to insist that it has to be done on your own account. Or you do it yourself, or get a third party to do it for you other than the JV manager. I mean, if I were to do this over, all right, there is no way I'm going to allow my JV manager to do my pre-launch advert or my launch adverts for me. I'm either going to do it myself, or I'm going to get a third party to do it using my account, because I could not get the pixels, which are very important to making post-launch sales for yourself. I could not get it from them because it was done on his own account. The best I could get was a list of the audience that they claimed they created from that advert that I paid for. I paid for those adverts. All right? Whose account will be used? We've discussed about that. What happens to the pixels and retargeting access? You got to ask all those. The best thing, if they are going to be doing it, you need to be asking, okay, are you going to get retargeting access to those pixels? Who's going to keep those pixels? Are they going to give you access to their account to be able to use it? All those you got to discuss. All right? Let's look at other issues, other JV manager issues. And we want to talk about sales pages and hosting. These are things I never thought about. Who will host the sales pages and upsell pages? It looks very common sense that it's going to be on your site, which it was when I started. Then they advised me that, we need to use a software called Convertri, because the pages on Convertri is very fast. And I even had the Convertri, and I agree. Convertri is probably the fastest website generator or sales page manager as a software on the planet right now. When you create a page on Convertri, I mean, it loads like 5 to 10 times faster than regular pages. So when they came to me and they said that, okay, let us put the sales page on Convertri. I had a Convertri account, and I actually did mention it, that why don't we create it on my own account? He said, no, that is faster for him to create on his own account. And because I didn't think, I allowed him to create his sales pages on his own Convertri account, despite the fact that I had one. And despite the fact that I paid for those pages. I had to pay the graphic designer, I paid the sales page, the copywriter. It was not as if he did it for me for free. I paid, all right? I paid for the design of the page. I paid for the copy. But I allowed them to create it on his own account, when I could easily have told the person creating the pages that I want them created on my own Convertri account. I could have insisted, and there would have been nothing my JV manager would do. But because I didn't think, the implications didn't even sink in with me until after the launch. All right? Because what happened after the launch was that, of course, when we started disagreeing on this issue of continuity and some of those things that were not discussed, all right, it wasn't going to give me access to the pages anymore. All right? I wanted to make some, when they did a countdown to do a promo, I wanted to remove it, and my JV manager told me, no, that we don't need those pages anymore. That no JVs are even going there anymore. I'm like, okay, I just want to change it. Because for some reason, and I don't know why that happened, that particular URL was still being accessed by some customers. I don't know where they got it from. So I wanted to make sure that the mistakes on that page were corrected. But it won't do it. And there's nothing I can do because I don't have access to his Convertri account. All right? And I was very angry about that because I felt it was unfair. And I had mentioned that, by the way, when he said he wanted to I create it. And now, don't misunderstand me. I am not here to criticize my JV managers. They did an awesome job. I'm just saying I didn't think well for myself. Because if I had insisted, I wanted the pages on my own Convertri account, I don't think they would have resisted me. But they suggested it. I didn't fight it. I didn't insist, despite the fact of having one, and I paid the price. Because when things fell apart later, they won't give me access to those pages. And then when I insisted, he now told me, well, what he's going to do is going to put another product on that page. And that was not going to happen. That was not going to happen from my own point of view, because the sales page had my brand name. Mobimatic is the name of my company. The page was called mobimatic.convertri.com. So which means I can't get access to that URL on my own account anymore because it's already taken. All right, I own Convertri. I own a Mobimatic, but the Convertri URL I can't get anymore. So I had to basically even threaten that I'm going to take this up legally. If you are going to put another product under the URL that bears my brand name, then we have an issue. So it was a non-pass. They couldn't put something else in it, but they refused to give it to me too. Or I can't have it. I don't even if they wanted to give me, it doesn't even look like they can give it to me, because once a page is created on one site, you can't create it on another site. The only option will be to destroy it on that first site so that URL name will become available again. But he was not willing to do that. So you have to be very careful about that. They will offer you. And sometimes, and I want to believe when this started, it was innocently. I don't think they really plan to cheat me with it. But because I didn't think, maybe they themselves didn't think of the implications. All right, I allowed them to create a page bearing the name of my company on their own account. And now I can't get it, and now they won't give it to me. And all of this could have been resolved before it started. You have to ask who will pay for sales page reviews suggested by JVs. Now, this is also something I never thought about, but it ended up costing me well over $5,000, which again comes off my net money, which is why I never got any money at the end of the day. See, I had already had my sales pages done. My sales page and upsells 1, 2, 3, and 4 is done. But when they took a look at it, they told me it needs to be reviewed, that it's not very well, it's not good enough to convert and all that. And because I trusted their judgment, I said, okay, let's redo it. Okay, now when we're going to redo it, they told me they're going to get some expert to review my page for me. They got the expert and we had to pay $3,000 for that. Okay, and when they said that, again, I did not clarify properly. What does review mean? Does it mean they're going to redo the page, or they're just going to look at it and tell me what we're going to change? In my own understanding, I thought that a review means they're going to make the changes that is necessary. But that's not the way they understood it. So by the time they came back, okay, we paid the guy. I think they said they are going to put some of that money down. I ended up paying, I think, like $2,000 out of that $3,000. I can't remember exactly. Yeah, $2,000. By the time they came back, all we got was a 1-page or 2-page summary of what needed to be changed on the page by the so-called expert reviewer, who is supposed to be a top sales copywriter. They told me if he's going to rewrite the whole thing for me, then I'm going to have to pay like $10,000 or some big money. So they're just going to review it and then get back to us. So when it came back, now we have to rewrite the whole sales page. Remember, I had already paid somebody lots of money to write those copy and then to create the pages. Now I have to pay a rewriter. I have to pay somebody else to rewrite the pages based on the review. Another $3,000 or so. I think that one was $1,000. They told me to pay. All right. I had to pay that person to rewrite the sales page based on the review from the expert. Now, after they rewrote it, now we have to redesign the whole page. Again, I have to pay a designer to redesign the page. Before I knew it, in that short circuit, I parted with over $5,000 that wasn't planned for. Even though I was pretty happy with my sales page and the sales copy, it was good. We had used it before the launch. It was converting well at pre-launch. But my JV manager insisted, when I could have said no. Part of what you have to learn here is how to tell your JV manager, no, it is your product. Or if you're happy with it, they better be happy with it also, or they can go do something else. Because you are paying them, they are not the one paying you. Okay, I never thought of it that way. So I was just like, whatever they wanted. All right, because at the end of the day, when they rewrote the pages and redesigned it, it wasn't much different from what I had before. In fact, I liked my original sales page better. But I was just saying yes. So I paid for review, I paid for a copy rewrite, and I paid for copy redesign. All right. I also found out later that this is something that you can negotiate for the JVs to actually chip in. Maybe you guys share the cost, and I think we did share the cost on one of the of those. I don't know whether it was the review or the sales copy or the design, and that was based on their own offer. Even I didn't even know enough to negotiate that. It was later that I found out that no, if they're going to review your pages after you have done them and they're going to redesign your sales pages, then they need to talk about how it's going to be funded. It's that you guys are going to fund it 50-50. After all, they are the ones suggesting it, or they leave your sales page the way it was. And at every point, you have to look at it in relation to your bottom line. All right, how will this impact my profits? What is my break-even point? Okay, so those are things I never thought about. Okay, you have to talk about who will pay the copy rewrite of sales pages after adjustment. Like I said, you have to discuss who will pay for the new graphic designs of the pages after the copy is rewritten. So it's a 3-part process. They want somebody to review your page. It's going to collect money to do the review. After it does the review, somebody has to rewrite the sales page because the graphic designer needs the complete sales copy to be able to redesign the page. So I have to pay 3 times again for what I already paid for before the launch. So basically, this is where all my profit ended up disappearing right before my eyes. I could have simply said no and saved myself $5,000. All right, because the original sales page was as good as the one that they finally gave me. But of course, I didn't know enough to negotiate. I wasn't thinking of my bottom line. I was just agreeing with everything they tell me because I told myself, since I have never done a launch before, I better do everything 100% the way they tell me if I really want to have the results that they've been having, because obviously these gentlemen there are 2 of them. I mean, they've been doing some of the biggest launches on the JV Zoo, so they obviously know what they are doing. But it is for me to negotiate because I found out later that the deals they gave me is not the same with everybody. People negotiate, people discuss. Some pay net, some pay there are all sorts of deals going on. It's your job to make sure you negotiate the best for yourself. I couldn't realistically expect them to be negotiating for me. And I naively thought that everything they say, they will be thinking about my own profitability. No, they are not. We have different paradigms. And I'm not saying it because I'm angry at them. It's just the way it is. And I'm not using it to pull them down. I'm just telling you it's a fact. I hope to become a JV manager myself someday. And I don't think I'm going to be negotiating for the other side. It's for the other side to know what to ask for. Or I would take pains sometimes to point out some of this stuff because it could have easily gotten very, very, very nasty. If I really wanted to push some things, I mean, we would have ended up in court because a lot of the stuff were not discussed with me or clarified to me. It was happening and then I have to pay for it. And I decided that I really don't want to get into a bitter fight over this, so I'll just have to pay whatever they said. So you don't want to be in that situation. You want to make sure you think about all this stuff before they happen. Let's look at another JV manager issues that people hardly ever think about. The buyers list and the follow-up emails. All right? It sounds commonsensical that when people buy from you, that you own the buyers list. But most of the JVs, they want a copy of that buyers list. And buyers list is the main reason even some people do launches. So if they're going to own your buyers list, that should probably even affect how much you pay in commission, in percentage. So I agree, but agreeing to the buyers list is not even so much the problem. But you have to discuss what can be done with that buyers list. Because in my own case, my JV manager was going to have the buyers list go to his own autoresponder. And then he was going to give me a copy of it by Excel later. At least at that point, I did think, I said no. Because I know getting the buyers list from in an Excel file is different from the buyers subscribing to you directly on your own autoresponder. It affects your deliverability. It affects your spam complaints. It affects a lot of stuff. At least that one I knew. A lot of people may not know that. So I insisted, no, my autoresponder will be the primary receptacle for the sign-up emails from JV Zoo, and that I will give them a copy of it after the launch in a form of Excel. Of course, they figure out a way to get it themselves directly because I give them access to my JV Zoo account. They do what they need to do there to get a copy of it, but it has to be discussed. What can be done with that email? Now, what do I mean by that? You have to discuss, can JVs use your brand name in their emails to buyers of your products? This is something I never thought about. Then it turned out to become an issue, because what the JVs did was that they created an email with my brand name in it. Okay? So it's like basically having Mobimatic at maybe their own domain name. So when your buyers see that, they think the email is coming from Mobimatic. So when I sent email to the same people, I started getting spam complaints because I was sending mails late. I'm new at this. I was new at that. I didn't really know how this is supposed to be done. So some of them started complaining that they were getting emails separately from my 2 JV managers, all right, who are all trying to exploit this hot list. And yet, they're supposed to be my buyers. So you have to discuss it. So later, I had to discuss it. In fact, I had to write them a letter that you cannot use emails with my brand name because it's confusing my managers. It's confusing my buyers. That you are free to use the buyers list since I agreed to give you a copy and I've given you a copy. But if you're going to mail them in your own name. Don't mail them in my name because the customers are thinking I'm mailing them 3-4 times a day when it's not me even doing the mailing. It is my 2 JV managers who are mailing them separately. In fact, one of them went on my page and basically tried to call one of my JV managers a spammer. It was abusing him that I got a spammer who was trying to pretend to be a Mobimatic staff. I had to go defend him because, he's my JV manager. I'm not going to stand by why they call him a spammer. So I had to post on the Facebook page that is authorized to send emails on our behalf, even though they never told me anything before they sent the email. In fact, the first email is sent basically at Mobimatic at whatever. And then it was promoting a different product while disguising as if it's giving them some of the bonuses that I promised them. It was really ingenious. I was just had to marvel. All right? Even though I knew nothing about it. They never discussed it with me. He never told me he was going to give any of my bonuses on my behalf. And there's no reason for it. The bonuses were already on the JV Zoo download page anyway, and it's already in the members area. So there was no reason for my JV manager to be sending them that bonus on my behalf. But that's the way they coined the email. All right, and say, find your bonuses from Mobimatic. And then the next line, they started talking about a whole different product that they were promoting. And some of the members caught that and came to the mastermind page to complain. At that point, I felt duty bound to defend my JV manager. Otherwise, they would have branded him as a spammer. Then I realized that I made a very big mistake by not discussing that up front. So even if you're going to agree, because I think most of them will want a copy of the buyers list. I think for a couple that I talked to, they all mentioned that they will want a copy of it. If you're going to concede that, all right, we want to make sure you also mention that, yes, they can get the buyers list if that you're going to give it to them, but they cannot use an email that has your company name in it because it will confuse your buyers and make you lose all the benefits of getting new buyers onto your list. All right? So you have to discuss it. Can they communicate with your buyers on your behalf? The answer should be a no. They are JV managers. Buyers are yours. All right? I did not think anything was wrong with it because I was just being very transparent. I was just being happy. But this is business. Your JV manager should not be communicating with your sellers after they've bought from you. Their job is to get you affiliates to promote your products, and you are paying them for that. So there's absolutely no reason why they should be communicating with your buyers. But mine were because I never discussed it. So now the whole reason of this anatomy of the mistakes I made is not to demarket any JV manager or to be bitter at any of them, but for you to understand that you have to negotiate for yourself. I can't blame them now because I'm the one that didn't negotiate. I'm the one that didn't talk about it. We just didn't talk about what kind of brand name they can use, which means they probably assume they can call it, they can get a domain name that is Mobimatic, and then be using it to market my customers as if it is Mobimatic that is sending them mail, which was not my intention. And if I had thought about that before the launch, there was no way I was going to agree to that. So I was now put in a situation where I now had to write them a formal email that I don't want you using my brand name or we're going to have a problem. Obviously, they didn't like that. But at that point, there was really nothing I can do. It's a brand name that I worked very hard to get. I spent a lot of money. All right. I had this big launch and I didn't have any of the profits in my pocket. I'm not going to share my brand even after that. So, and I put down my foot and I was ready to go to court over it if they continue to use it. So it created a bit of a bad blood that could have been avoided if we discuss this upfront. So because you want to keep a good relationship with your managers. I mean, I'm still going to have lunch very soon. I'm not even sure if they want to promote, to manage my lunch then, because they're now feeling that all this stuff that I'm discussing after the fact is not fair or being ungrateful, though they themselves didn't discuss it. All right. But I could have avoided that and everybody could have been smiling if we had discussed this before we went forward. And I would have said you can't use any email or any domain that has Mobimatic in it because it's a brand name that is reserved for my company. I don't think that would be considered unreasonable if you discuss that upfront. It is discussing it after they have already created an email with your name on it that becomes a problem. I hope you get this. All right? And then as far as communication is concerned, you got to make it clear. They are your customers. You are the only one that can communicate with them. Now, of course, you also have the choice to allow them to communicate with your customers, but at least you'll be doing it knowingly, knowing the implications. All right? You are free to enter whatever agreement you want. What is not right is for you to be ignorant. And that's the whole idea of these deadly sins that we're talking about. Let's look at something else that is also related to JV managers. I did tell you this is the biggest mistake I made. All right, so I want to cover every area to make sure you never made that mistake again. At least you are discussing with knowledge and intelligence. All right, now for every big launch or any launch for that matter, the post-launch webinars are very important because generally you stand to make between another 20 to 30% of what you made in the whole launch in your first post-launch webinar. That's how important post-launch webinars are. So it is important to discuss it. Who controls the post-launch webinars? I didn't even discuss it. I didn't even think about it. All right? All right, you got to ask them. You guys have to discuss it. All right? If you are using third-party webinars, in other words, if the webinar is being done by a third party and not you, you have to discuss whose affiliate links will be used to register your members. I didn't discuss all of this. All right? And then you have to discuss how would the post-launch webinar income be shared. I never discussed that. Guess what happened in my case? What now happened is that without even discussing it with me, because I gave them access to my JV page, because I didn't think it mattered, they went ahead and put a post-launch webinar for a third party. All right? I happen to even know the third party is even my friend, but me and that third party never discussed. All right? They put the post-launch webinar link as the automatic registration that JVZoo allows you to do for those who just bought your product. So on my JVZoo account, immediately they buy the product, they automatically signed up for the post-launch webinar for this third party. And guess what? That link contained the affiliate link of my JV manager, not mine. So basically, all the income from that post-launch webinar went to my JV managers. I mean, I'm talking about people who bought my product. That I was really, really, really very upset about. I thought it was unfair. But again, I didn't discuss it. They didn't do it in secret. I saw it there when I was checking the post-launch webinar thing. I saw that link. I could have challenged them and said, what is this? And then I could have insisted, okay, what affiliate link is going to be used for this? Because when I saw it, I did ask them that, okay, if we are going to be sending my buyers to this webinar, how do we make money? And they told me we are going to make money. And I just took them at their word. But it didn't occur to me that to make money, it has to come through your affiliate link. So the webinar had the affiliate link in there. So when they did the webinar, whatever they sold, even though later they were telling me they didn't sell much, they only sold 5 or 9 or whatever is what they are telling me. But the post-launch webinar was like a $1,000 product. Even if they sold 3, that's $3,000. All right, I'm entitled to a big chunk of that. Because typically it should have been, we share that in the ratio of sharing the money, which means they should get 20%, I should get 80%. Or worst case scenario, it will be a 50-50 thing. I didn't even get a dime. All right, I mentioned it even after the fact, and all they can tell me is that, oh, they didn't make much money from the post-launch webinar because my software was having problems and all that. And I was just bewildered till we speak. They didn't give me a dime of that money. And yet, that typically should be like another 20% to 30% on top of what you made during your launch. So you got to pay attention. You got to discuss it. The post-launch webinar should be in your control, typically. I mean, when I did the industry survey later, that's what I hear. All right, that of course the post-launch webinar is yours. It should actually be a webinar that you are organizing yourself. All right, so that you can make extra money from them by selling them, upselling them on what you already have. And if you're going to use a third-party webinar, it should be your affiliate link that is connected to it, not theirs. And more importantly, that they shouldn't even be entitled to any part of your post-launch webinar. It is your post-launch webinar. The launch is over. All right. And if you're even going to give them any part of that, it shouldn't be more than the percentage of their of the sales based on the JV management agreement, which means in my case, it shouldn't have been more than 20% of gross. But I didn't even get any because I didn't discuss it. Now, see how important this is? I never thought about it, but you have to. They know the importance of these post-launch webinars. They know the kind of money to be made there. Most JV managers know that. So if you don't discuss it, they will do what they think is right in their own views. And then at the end of the day, you're going to be out of money. You're going to be upset. You're going to be angry. But you only have yourself to blame. Just in this case, I can't blame them. I can only blame myself. Your ignorance will hurt you. It will be unreasonable for me to expect them to be looking out for my own interest. They are looking for theirs. And when you do the product launch miracle course itself, I discuss about the paradigm differences, all right, between JV managers, between affiliates, and the product owner. Because all three of you are coming at this stuff from totally different perspectives. And it will be naive of you to think that the JV manager is thinking the way you are thinking. It will be naive for you to think that the affiliates are thinking the way you are thinking. They are thinking for themselves. You need to think for yourself. And this is one of the things that need to be a deal breaker. If they're not going to let you control the launch webinar, my personal advice is that don't use those JV managers. All right? Because this is, is almost like 20% added to whatever you made in your launch. You're not going to give that away just because you're ignorant. You got to discuss it and ultimately reach an agreement that you can live with, whether they are going to collect the percentage of the post-launch webinar commensurate with their JV manager fee, or worst case scenario, you guys are going to be sharing 50-50, and then you are going to be controlling the link, so that way they use your affiliate link, and you are not the one in position to pay them the money, not let the money go to them, and then you are now at their mercy, like it happened in my case. Because rather than give me whatever share I'm entitled to in the post-launch webinar, all they were telling me is that they didn't make as much as they could be making because my product sucked. And yet my product sucking is supposed to not get anything to do with how the post-launch webinar money is shared. I mean, I'm giving it to you the raw thing. I told you it's a case study. This is not something I learned from somebody else's book or whatever. I'm telling you what happened in my launch. And I'm not even holding my JVs responsible. I'm holding my own ignorance responsible. And that is why this is a good product for you to watch, to make your notes, so that when you are discussing with your own JV managers in future, you are going to be discussing with intelligence. You are going to be hitting the points that could cause problems later, as it did for me and my JVs. All right? So bottom line is that you have to discuss all JV management issues openly, then document it in a written agreement, or you will regret it. It has to be discussed. Nothing is too small to be discussed. You cannot assume. Because when things go south and you start losing money and you go back to them like I did, and I try to get them to see why they need to maybe reduce that 20% gross to like 15% so that I can end up with some money in my pocket, they were upset by that. They wrote me a stinker letter back and said, no, this was discussed with me verbally and in writing, so they're going to keep it the way it is, and I'm on my own. I mean, it left a sour taste in my mouth, okay? And the way I was pushing back probably also left a sour taste in their mouth. So now we have a strained relationship when we could be celebrating and looking forward to our next launch, simply because there were a lot of assumptions on both sides. You don't want to assume. You want to make sure it's discussed, and you want to make sure it's documented.